I still remember the moment the handyman's hands trembled and his hoarse voice whispered, "Ma'am, you should pack your things and leave this house now. Don't say anything to your son if you want to stay alive." I went numb. He had just cut a small hole in the bathroom wall where I shower every morning and saw something that made his face go pale. In the dark gap between the tiles, hidden deep inside, was a thin tube tied into the hot water line, filled with a strange green liquid. I didn't understand until he said 2 words: poison. My heart turned to ice. The room that used to be my place of peace suddenly became a murder trap. I stood shaking in the steam, my mind holding only one question that kept echoing: why would my son want me dead? And from that second on, I knew everything I had believed for 70 years was about to collapse. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. My name is Martha Reynolds, 70 years old, widowed for 8 years. The little house in the suburbs of Austin used to be where my husband Frank and I raised our only son, Evan. We lived there for 40 years, planted roses in the backyard, hosted Christmas parties for the neighbors, and watched the kids on the block grow up with Evan. After Frank died of a heart attack, that house turned so quiet it was frightening. At night, I heard nothing but the ticking clock and the wind hissing through an empty window frame. Maybe Evan felt sorry for me, so he kept calling to say, "Mom, you shouldn't live alone in a house that big. It's dangerous. Sell it and move closer to me and Naomi. I'll take care of you." I hesitated for a long time. That house was my whole life. Every brick, every curtain tied to a memory. But when loneliness crept in night after night, reason lost to the fear of aging alone. In the end, I nodded. Sold the house for over $900,000. Evan suggested moving all the money into a joint account so it's easy for you to withdraw when you need it. I trusted my son. I even felt lighter, thinking he was looking out for me. My son and his wife's apartment was in Maple Creek, a quiet neighborhood with a lake and lovely maples year-round. My daughter-in-law, Naomi, 7 years younger than Evan, worked as an accountant for an insurance company. She always spoke softly, smiled politely, the kind of person anyone would think was gentle. The day I moved in, Naomi made an apple pie and hugged me for a long time. "I'm so happy to have you here. Our home will feel much warmer now." In the first weeks, I was truly happy. In the morning, I brewed coffee, Naomi toasted bread, and Evan read the paper. They told me, "Don't lift a finger, Mom, just rest." On weekends, we watched movies, ate popcorn, and talked about Frank, the man Evan used to idolize. I thought maybe my old age would be peaceful like that, but then the peace started to crack bit by bit. I noticed I was more tired. Sometimes while washing dishes, I had to sit down because of dizziness. The heavy-headed feeling dragged on for weeks. Naomi said, "Maybe I wasn't used to the climate here." And Evan said, "It's just age, Mom, happens to everyone." He handed me small white pills, said the doctor recommended them to help you sleep. I never questioned it. I trusted my son. One morning, while wiping the mirror in my private bathroom, I saw a water stain spreading on the ceiling. At first, it was as small as a hand, but a few days later, it was the size of a plate. I told Evan at dinner, "Son, I think there's a leak in my bathroom. The ceiling's starting to soak through." Evan stopped eating and shot a quick glance at Naomi. That look sent a chill down my back, but I didn't know why. "I'll check later, Mom. It's fine," he said, then kept eating. 3 days passed, and water began dripping onto the tile floor. I brought it up again. This time, Evan forced a smile. "Okay, I'll call a repairman tomorrow." The next morning, just as I finished brewing coffee, the doorbell rang. A middle-aged man in a blue coverall introduced himself. "Hello, ma'am, I'm Leon the plumber. Someone reported a leak in this unit." I led him to the bathroom and pointed at the damp spot. He nodded, then asked to check the unit upstairs. 20 minutes later he came back, voice low. "No issue with the pipes upstairs. It may be inside this wall. I'll need to open a small section to see clearly." I agreed. As he picked up the drill, Naomi stepped out of the bedroom with her purse and said briefly, "I'm going out for a bit." Evan had already left for work. The drill whirred steadily, then cut off. I heard him call me, voice soft but urgent. "Ma'am, could you come here for a moment?" When I stepped in, Leon stood frozen, his face wax pale. A fist-sized hole gaped in the wall, and inside, among the plumbing lines, was a thin glass tube holding a pale emerald liquid. He glanced around, as if afraid someone might hear, then asked quietly, "How long have you lived here?" "Over a year," I said, confused. "Is something wrong?" He exhaled. "Ma'am, this isn't part of the plumbing. It's a chemical misting device. When you turn on hot water, the steam carries toxin. You inhale it without knowing." I went rigid. In a flash, every symptom, fatigue, dizziness, shortness of breath rose up as plainly as a confession from the house itself. "But who? Who would do that?" I stammered. Leon looked at me and said slowly, "Whoever did this knows exactly what they're doing and wants you to die slowly. It's hidden so perfectly almost no one would detect it. I've done this for 25 years, and I've never seen anything like it." I couldn't speak. I gripped the sink hard, my mind spinning. Evan's face flashed through my head, my son, the little hands that held mine while learning to walk, the warm voice saying, "Mom," every morning. No, it couldn't be. Leon carefully removed the glass tube and sealed it in a small evidence bag. "I'll take a sample for testing. You have to leave here immediately. Don't tell anyone, especially your son. Why not tell him? He needs to know." He cut me off, voice rough. "What if he's the one who did it?" I staggered. Those words struck my heart. He continued, "Grab your documents, cash, necessary meds. I'll take you somewhere safe. And please don't let anyone know you left." I stood frozen in that small room, staring at the warm steam rising from the shower, the same steam that may have been carrying poison into my lungs for months. On the shelf, a ceramic mug that read, "Best Mom Ever," suddenly felt cruelly ironic. I went to my room, opened the drawer, and grabbed my passport, bank book, wallet, and a few old photos. On the table sat a picture of Evan at 5, brown-haired, smiling in my arms. I touched that little face, and tears spilled. When I returned, Leon had sealed up the wall to hide the cut. He spoke softly. "Let's go, Mrs. Martha." I didn't ask where. I only knew I had to leave right now, leave the place I'd called home. The door clicked shut behind me, leaving a heavy darkness inside, as if it swallowed all the years I believed a mother's love could shield her from the world's ugliness. I never imagined evil was hidden inside the very walls my son once promised would keep Mom safe. Leon's car rolled slowly through the sun-washed suburban streets, the sky copper at dusk. I clutched my bag in my lap. Inside were just some IDs, a little cash, and a small frame of me with Evan as a child. The shock hadn't faded. In my ears, his warning still echoed. "Don't tell your son if you want to stay alive." Every city sound, horns, dogs barking, leaves rustling, felt unfamiliar. I stared through the fogged window, stunned that only hours earlier I still believed I lived in a warm, loving family. When the car turned down a narrow lane behind a small motel, Leon spoke quietly. "You can stay here tonight. It's quiet and safe. In the morning, I'll take the sample for testing." I just nodded, my throat dry. In the tiny room, yellow light fell over a scuffed wooden table. I sat still, steam from a cooling cup of tea mixing with the fear spreading through my chest. Everything seemed to circle back to the beginning, the old house. Frank and I spent over 40 years building that home. A red tile roof place in a peaceful neighborhood with a wide porch and a rose trellis blooming all summer. Each morning Frank watered the plants, and I baked and brewed coffee. That house held our laughter, Christmas parties, and rainy days spent side by side listening to the radio. After Frank passed, everything fell into a void. I walked through each room, heard his voice echo in the wind, and felt small inside the past. Sleepless nights made me think of Evan. My son was married and lived not even a 20-minute drive away. I didn't want to bother him, but he kept calling. "Mom, you can't stay in that house forever. It's too big and dangerous for you. Sell it, I'll help you invest safely." I believed him. I even believed Naomi's gentle smile, the daughter-in-law I once thought was a blessing. When the agent handed me a check for over $900,000, my hands shook so badly I could hardly sign. I joked, if Frank were alive, he wouldn't believe this number. Evan laughed, put his arm around me, and said warmly, "Now you only need to rest. I'll handle everything. I'll move the money to a joint account anytime you need it. You can withdraw. It's easier to manage." I trusted him. All my life, I trusted my son. I didn't know that from the moment I signed, I had handed my life over to him. The first weeks after moving into the Maple Creek apartment were truly pleasant. Naomi cooked well, always asked what I wanted, even let me pick the movie every night. She was so attentive it made me shy. Every night before bed, she'd knock on my door with a glass of water and some white pills. "Please take these, Mom. The doctor said seniors need vitamin D and melatonin to sleep better." I was touched and took them without a second thought. But soon after, I felt different. My body grew heavy, my heart raced, and every morning I woke up exhausted like after a fever. Food smells made me nauseous. My eyes often blurred. I figured it was age or missing my husband. No one said I was sick. They just told me I was a bit weaker and should rest more. Evan was always busy. Whenever I wanted to go out for a walk, he waved it off. "Let me drive you. You shouldn't go out alone." I thought then how thoughtful my son was. Looking back now, maybe he just didn't want me to meet anyone or talk by accident. That night, when Leon said, "chemical misting device," I still tried to deny it. I said, "Maybe someone installed it by mistake, or a previous repair went wrong." Leon looked at me, eyes sad but steady. "Mrs. Martha, no one mistakenly installs this type of device. It's hidden very carefully. Whoever did it must know the technique and understand chemicals." Those words dropped me into a pit. Evan had worked nearly 10 years as a technician at a chemical company in Dallas. He knew exactly how compounds react with steam. I sank onto the edge of the bed. The motel room smelled damp and old, but to me it was the only safe place now. Leon sat across from me, speaking softly as if not to frighten me further. "Can you recall if anyone's been in and out recently, or if anything was repaired?" I tried to think. Besides Evan and Naomi, there were only a few times electricians checked the heating system, and Evan called them. I realized then he had planned this for a long time. I asked Leon, "Do you think they really want me dead? For what?" He was absent, quiet for a moment, then said slowly, "Usually things like this come down to money or control." Money. Those two syllables made me go cold. The house money, the joint account, everything in Evan's hands. I had given him everything, and now he only needed a natural death to legitimize it all. Leon opened his bag and took out the small vial of pale green liquid he'd removed from the wall. "I'll get this tested. It smells a bit like diluted arsenic compounds, highly toxic but hard to detect. I saw something like it once in a suspected arson case with poisoning. For seniors, long-term inhalation weakens them, then they die of multiple organ failure. Police might chalk it up to age, I sat motionless. Everything spun like a whirlpool. Evan, the child I sacrificed my youth to raise, had calculated his mother's death like a financial problem. Leon looked at me, firmer now. You cannot go back there. I know someone in the police department, Investigator Richard Hayes. When the results come in, I'll bring him to meet you. For now, rest, and absolutely do not contact your son or daughter-in-law. I nodded, holding back tears. A strange emptiness rose in me, like the rest of my life had just been stripped of its shell of trust. When Leon left, I locked the door and sat on the edge of the bed. The soft yellow light reflected off the small frame I'd set on the table, Evan at 5, beaming in a blue-striped shirt holding a kite. I remembered Frank saying, "This boy is smart, he'll do great things." And he did great things, just not the ones we dreamed of. I touched the frame. It was ice cold. Tears fell onto the cloudy glass. I whispered, as if to myself, "Why did you do this, Evan? What did I ever do wrong to you?" No one answered. Only the wind at the window, slipping through the curtains, brought a cutting chill. In the dark, I sat for a very long time, listening to my heart beat weakly, each beat a reminder that I was still alive. Alive after my own child's hand. I didn't know what the future would be. But in that moment, I swore to myself, I would not give him another chance. Before turning off the light, I opened a small notebook and wrote a few short lines. If I'm gone tomorrow, know that I trusted the one I loved most. Then I closed it gently, set it beside the photo frame, and sat still until the faint light of dawn seeped through the curtains. A chapter in my life had closed the chapter of blind trust, and ahead, I didn't know what lay there. But deep down, I felt it clearly. That house didn't just hide a scheme, it buried a mother's soul. That night, Austin's sky hung heavy, no moon, no stars, only the chorus of insects mixing with cold wind across quiet streets. I pulled on a thick sweater and stuffed everything I could carry into my bag. IDs, bank book, cards, a few changes of clothes, some cash, and a small frame of Frank and young Evan. Not much, but everything that still made me feel I existed. Leon waited in the courtyard. When I stepped out, he only nodded, no words. We got in the car and left Maple Creek in silence. I looked back through the window. The building faded into the dark, a pale strip of light leaking from Evan's window. I once believed it was the safest place in my life. Now it was nothing but a rotten nest, hiding a plan to kill. Leon drove slowly, avoiding major roads. He kept the cabin lights off. Only the dim dash glow lit his serious face. I heard the tires hum on the asphalt, and a lump rose in my throat. A stranger was saving my life, while my own son wanted to bury me alive. After more than half an hour, the car turned into a narrow alley leading to the southern outskirts. Old wooden houses crowded together, sparse streetlights, spring damp seeping into every crack. Leon stopped in front of a 2-story beige motel, paint faded. A wooden sign swung outside. Hillcrest Inn, family-owned since 1957. "Stay here for a short while," he said, opening my door. "The innkeeper is an old friend. He's discreet and doesn't ask questions." A tired-looking middle-aged man with stubble opened the door. Leon introduced me as a relative who needs a few days. No one asked more. My room was upstairs, small but clean. A single bed, a wooden desk, dark brown curtains. It smelled of damp wood and cheap soap, but at least it was safe. When Leon left to make a few calls, I sat on the edge of the bed, still gripping my bag. It had all happened in hours, yet my life felt turned upside down. Emptiness spread in me as if someone had ripped away the foundation I'd clung to for 70 years. I raised Evan with these hands, taught him to walk, to read, to tell right from wrong. I believed a mother's love was the one thing that could never be betrayed. But now, Staring at the little picture in my bag, I no longer saw an innocent child. I saw a man with a cold gaze drifting away from me. The phone buzzed, cutting my thoughts. The screen flashed Evan's name. My heart stopped. I knew if I didn't answer, he'd be suspicious. But if I said the wrong thing, I might die. I inhaled deeply and tried to steady my voice. "Son? Mom, where did you go? I came home and you weren't here." I glanced around the unfamiliar room, forcing my mind to move fast. I went to the market. It's been a while since I made that beef stew you like. At this hour? You went grocery shopping at this hour? There was a hard edge in his voice, nothing like a worried son. "I just needed some air," I said, trying a small laugh. "I felt a little tired today." He took a breath on the other end, then asked the question that nearly made me drop the phone. "Did the repairman open the wall?" I froze. My heart pounded like drums. How did he know? He wasn't home when Leon came. Did Naomi tell him? Was there a camera? I swallowed and answered slowly. "No, it's nothing." He just took a quick look. Said it was old piping. Silence for a few seconds. I could hear his steady breathing. Then he spoke, voice light enough to chill me. "Good. Get some rest, Mom. Don't worry about anything. I'll have someone clean it up." "No need, son. Everything's fine. I just want to be sure," he said, and hung up. I kept the phone in my hand for a long time. The screen had gone dark, but I could still see his eyes, the eyes that once made me proud, now making me shake. The door opened softly and Leon stepped in, bringing the night chill with him. He was with a man around 50, tall, salt and pepper hair, wearing a black leather jacket. "Mrs. Martha, this is Richard Hayes, my friend, with the Austin Police Department." The man held out his hand, shook gently, his voice low but friendly. "I've heard from Leon. You're safe now. We need to talk." We sat around the small table beside a cup of cold coffee. Leon took a glass vial with the strange green liquid from his bag. Richard put on gloves and raised it under the desk lamp. "This isn't a household compound," he said. "I'll send it to the toxicology lab right away, but I need you to tell me everything." I started from the beginning, selling my house, moving the money into a joint account, Naomi pushing me to take supplements every night, and the way Evan gradually took control of everything in my life, from finances and schedule to who was allowed to visit. My voice trembled, but each sentence felt carved out of memory. When I got to the part where Leon discovered the device in the wall, Richard looked up, his gaze turning sharp. "You said your son works in chemicals?" "Yes. He used to be a technician at a company that makes solvents and industrial compounds." "Then it all lines up," he said. "A device like this isn't installed by a layperson." Leon nodded. "The pipe junctions, the way the lines were hidden, very professional. Someone wanted you dead without raising suspicion." The room went quiet for a few seconds. My heart felt heavy, as if I'd just heard a sentence passed on my own child. "Why me?" I whispered. "I gave my whole life to him." Richard opened a small notebook and jotted down a few lines. "It could be about money." "You said the house proceeds were placed in a joint account?" "Yes," I answered, my voice tight. "Evan said it would be easier to manage since I forget passwords." I trusted him. "And who holds the card now?" "Only him." Richard looked up. "Then it's clear. This isn't just attempted poisoning, it's a deliberate plan to seize your assets." I covered my face, feeling my whole body collapse. For years I believed I was a lucky mother with a successful, dutiful son. Now it was all a mask hiding greed and coldness. Leon laid a hand on my shoulder. "You're not alone, Martha. We'll help you." Richard stood, slipped the evidence vial into his jacket. "I'll get this to the lab tonight. We should have results by morning. For now, stay here and do not contact your son or daughter-in-law. Even if they call, text, or show up, don't open the door. I nodded, trying to smile, though my lips were shaking. Thank you, both of you. Leon looked at me, his eyes gentle but firm. Try to get some sleep. Tomorrow will be a long day. After they left, I closed the door and leaned against the wall. The motel room sank into silence. Streetlight leaked through the curtains, casting broken streaks on the wall like the faint beats of my weakening heart. I opened my bag and set the picture frame on the table. In the photo, Evan was grinning in the rose garden. Frank stood behind him with a hand on his shoulder, a moment that once felt permanent, now only the past. I touched my son's face lightly, feeling the cold glass. In the dim light, my eyes filled. But this time, I wasn't only tears, there was a faint, rising resolve. Outside, wind moved through the leaves with a dry sound like whispers from the past. I knew that when morning came, my life would never be the same. But at least tonight I had survived. And I would fight for the truth, for justice, and for the part of me as a mother that never wanted to give up. Morning came slower than I expected. Faint light slipped through the curtains onto the blotched wood floor. I sat up, shoulders aching as if I'd come through a nightmare, only this wasn't a dream. I had barely slept. Every small sound, the wind at the window, the drip in the sink made me jump. Around 8 a.m., Leon knocked. He held a hot coffee and a bag of toast. His eyes were tired but seemed relieved. The lab has the sample. Richard's on his way with some updates. I forced a smile and took the coffee. The heat steadied my shaking hands. When Richard arrived, he carried a thick file. He sat, opened his notes. Mrs. Martha, I need a few more details about your son, especially their recent finances. I spoke slowly. In the final months before everything blew up, the air at home had changed. I heard them arguing more sometimes, right in the kitchen when they thought I'd gone to bed. Naomi's voice was shrill, and Evan's was harsh and cornered, like a man pressed to the wall. Once, I accidentally heard the words, wiped out, and debt. When I stepped in to ask, they fell silent, and Naomi forced a smile. It's nothing, Mom. We're just talking investments. I remember Evan's face that day, pale, sweat on his forehead even though the weather was cool. I thought they were stressed from work. I never imagined debt or danger. Looking back, that was likely when the plan to poison me took shape. Richard took notes, then looked up. You said he mentioned a will? I nodded. About 2 months ago, he said, Mom, you should make a will for peace of mind, just in case. I'll help draft it so you don't have to worry about the paperwork. I thought he was being thoughtful, so I said I'd consider it. Richard sighed. That sounds like groundwork for the entire plan. If you died, the joint account and assets would legally pass to your son. I went still. I never thought a harmless-sounding sentence could be the first brick in a plan to kill. He continued, We also learned you have a life insurance policy your late husband left, right? Yes. Frank bought it years ago. After he passed, I was the primary beneficiary and Evan the contingent. I never thought to change it. Now I see. They were eyeing not only the house money but the insurance. If you died, your son would get everything. The words hit the room like a hammer. I bowed my head, my fingers clenching a cold cup of coffee. A chill spread from my palms to my chest. I thought of Naomi always making my breakfast, insisting I take vitamins every night. I remembered the faint bitterness of those little pills and the gentle look as she watched me swallow them. Leon noticed my face and asked softly, Do you think those pills had something wrong with them? I nodded, my voice catching. I'm not sure. But every time I took them, the next morning I felt exhausted. My vision blurred. My heart raced. When I tried to stop, Naomi said the doctor wanted me to finish the full course. I believed her. Leon's hand tightened into a fist, his voice low. Good thing you found out in time. A few more months without discovering that device, and this might have ended exactly as they planned. I looked at him, tears rising. I don't understand how it got to this. What did I do wrong? What kind of son did I raise, Leon? He went quiet for a few seconds, then said gently, You did nothing wrong, Martha. Some people let greed blind them to blood ties. The only thing you should do now is protect yourself. Richard agreed. He said he'd file an emergency request with the court for temporary witness protection. In the meantime, police would relocate me to a safe apartment, assign surveillance, and monitor Evan's banking activity. If he tries to withdraw or transfer funds, we'll have grounds to open a formal investigation, he said. Relief and heaviness both settled over me. Relief that I wasn't alone. Heaviness that my life had entered a criminal case. I was no longer just a grieving old mother. I was a witness in a crime committed by my own son. That afternoon, Richard left with the chemical sample and his notes. Leon stayed, bringing hot food from a nearby place. He set a container of chicken soup on the table. The smell was comforting, but I couldn't swallow. Every spoonful brought back Evan's face, his smile, the boy riding behind his father's bike, those eyes bright with belief. Now I saw only the shadow in those eyes, cold, calculating, empty. Leon urged me to eat a little, said. My body needed strength to fight. I listened, but didn't answer. One question kept repeating in my head. Did I give birth to a monster? I remembered how, as a child, when I scolded Evan, he would go silent, never argue back. As an adult, he became closed off, eager to control everything. I used to be proud, thinking my son was strong and steady. But maybe that silence hid the truth. A chilling cruelty I never saw in time. Night fell, and rain began. It pattered on the motel's tin roof. Leon slept on the couch, and I lay in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling. The wall clock ticked slowly, each beat like a countdown to when the truth would be exposed. Around midnight, Richard called back. His voice was low but urgent. Mrs. Martha, I submitted the witness protection request. It's been temporarily approved. Police will move you to a safe apartment in the morning. Don't go out, and don't answer any calls except from me and Leon. I thanked him, my voice hoarse. The test results will come soon, he added. But prepare yourself. If it's poison, we'll open a criminal investigation immediately. I set the phone down and looked out the window. The rain kept falling, heavy drops like memories pounding my heart. I thought of Frank if he were alive. Could he have stopped Evan? Or was it me, indulging our son so much that he came to believe money mattered more than his mother's life? Lightning flashed, lighting the small room. In that flicker, the photo frame on the table reflected my face, old, tired, cracked like my life. I turned away and pulled the blanket up. The sounds faded. Only my pounding heartbeat and the unanswered question remained. Did I give birth to a monster? Or did the monster rise from a mother's blind love? I didn't know. I only knew that when the sun rose, I would start a journey I'd never imagined. A journey to reclaim justice and to face my own child. The next morning, just as the sun edged over the trees, Richard returned with 2 officers. He told me the witness protection order had been approved. I'd be moved to a safe apartment on the west side of Austin, where police could watch discreetly. They drove me in an unmarked car with dark windows. I sat in the back hugging my small bag, the remnants of my old life. Outside, familiar roads slid by like tapes of memory in reverse. The market where I once took Evan for ice cream, the street leading to the house Frank and I laid brick by brick. Now it was all dusty memories. The safe apartment was in an older complex, away from downtown. The window faced a small parking lot and a few bare oaks. Inside was minimal. 1 bedroom, a spare living room with a sofa, a tiny kitchen, a dining table. No photos, no flowers, no trace of anyone's life. Richard handed me a burner phone with 3 programmed numbers, his, Leon's, and the Witness Protection Center. Don't use your personal phone anymore, he said firmly. We suspect your son can track it. From now on, all contact goes through us. I nodded, but it felt like signing up for confinement. When Richard and the officers left, the apartment turned quiet and cold again. I closed the door and leaned on it. Emptiness spread through me. The first days there were endless. I couldn't go out unless escorted. Food arrived each morning. I passed time by rereading old books. Leon brought novels I once loved, though I couldn't keep my mind on the lines. At night, I sat by the window looking out. Streetlight glowed on the wet pavement, reflecting strangers' shadows as they passed. I wondered if any of them carried a burden like mine. The feeling of being betrayed by your own blood is beyond words. Sometimes I thought of Frank. I imagined what he would say if he saw me now, hiding, afraid, running from our own son. He used to believe Evan was good, bright, and kind. "Our boy will never do wrong," he said once. But Frank wasn't here to see our son become creating one, someone who could kill his mother for money. One night, when the clock struck 11, the burner phone buzzed softly. The sound was small, but in the still apartment it cracked like thunder. I picked up, heart pounding. "Mrs. Martha, it's me, Richard," he said. "The lab results just came in." I gripped the phone. He paused a beat, then enunciated. "The liquid in the wall contains arsenic and several other toxic compounds. The concentration is low but lethal with continuous exposure." My lips trembled. Even though I suspected it, hearing it confirmed shook me. He went on. "We've obtained a search warrant for your son's apartment. The search will be conducted early tomorrow. I need you to stay calm and not leave this place. If any other calls come in, even familiar voices, don't answer." I whispered, barely audible. "I understand." After the call, I sat still. The room light cast my thin shadow on the wall, slight and pitiful. I thought of all the times. Evan hugged me as a child, the countless, "I love you, Mom." Maybe those words were true until money became the only thing he worshipped. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the table and listened to the clock tick. Outside, the city kept moving while I was trapped in a cold apartment, a mother hunted by her own child. The next morning was dull gray. Richard called again near 10 a.m. "Mrs. Martha," he said, "we just finished the search." I held my breath. "We found a notebook in your son's office. It details dosages, symptoms, and even the projected time of your passing." I couldn't speak. He continued, voice lower. "There are lines like reduce dose 0.2 if coughing increases, and hot water helps diffuse faster. He tracked your condition day by day, like an experiment. You're lucky, Martha. If Leon hadn't found that device, a few more weeks and—" He stopped. The unfinished sentence turned the room to ice. I pressed a hand to my chest as tears spilled, not from fear, but from a pain without a name, the pain of realizing the child you once rocked to sleep calculated your death with cold numbers. Richard spoke again, more serious. "But there's worse. When we arrived, the apartment was empty. Evan and Naomi are gone. Their car isn't in the lot. Phones, computers wiped clean." "You mean they ran?" I asked, my voice rasping. "We can't say for sure, but likely. The task force is tracking credit and traffic cameras. However," he paused, "there's a chance they'll try to contact you or come after you." A chill ran through me. I gripped the table edge to stay steady. Richard added, "We'll increase security around this place, but you must be very careful. They planned thoroughly enough that finding you isn't impossible." After the call, I paced the room. Morning light sifted through the window, faint as mist. Inside me spun a mix of fear and anger. All these years, I believed a mother's love was the strongest shield on earth. But some children will drive a knife straight through it just to touch the shiny metal called money. I sat and held the small photo frame Leon had brought from the motel. Frank smiled gently beside the old rose garden. I spoke in my heart. Frank, if you were alive, you wouldn't believe what's happening to us. But I swear I won't let them win. I won't let the evil in my own blood prevail. I wiped my tears and looked straight into the glass. In my blurred reflection, I saw the woman I once was, not a frail old lady, but someone who had survived loss, raised a child through hardship, and held a home together during her husband's illness. That woman was still there, only hidden by fear. That night, under the streetlights, I sat by the window for a long time. Outside, darkness covered the quiet complex, but inside me, a small flame had started to burn. I didn't know what the future held, or whether I had the free strength to walk this whole road. But I knew one thing for sure. I had survived my own son's plot. And as long as I could breathe, I would fight to bring the truth to light. I closed my eyes and listened to the wind slip through the frame, no longer frightening. It sounded like the breath of freedom, fragile but real. In the cold apartment, I whispered, "I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a witness, and I will make justice speak." If you're still listening to this story, and you also believe that justice finds its way back, please tell me where you're watching from in the comments below, or share your thoughts even if they're small. The news spread faster than I expected. The next morning, local TV stations all reported a couple suspected of poisoning a relative to seize assets, though no names were released. But I knew without reading to the end, I knew it was Evan and Naomi. Richard called briefly. "We've issued a statewide alert. They may still be nearby. Do not go outside and keep your doors locked." His tone was firm, but I could hear a thread of fatigue, as if the case was slipping beyond what he'd planned. I set the phone down, my hands still shaking. Part of me was afraid, but the other part tasted bitter. I never imagined that at this age I'd be living in hiding like a criminal, while the real criminal, my own son, was free out there. Leon came in the afternoon with a small bag and said he would stay a few days. "I once promised I wouldn't leave you alone," he said. "The police may be busy, but I'm not." Those words were simple, but they choked me up. In a world where family can betray you, a stranger chose to stay and protect me. Leon didn't talk much, he acted. He checked the locks, turned off extra lights, taped the curtains shut, then cooked a simple dinner, chicken soup and toast. I watched him stir the soup, his silhouette tilted under the kitchen light. There was something about Leon that made me feel calm, the way he moved slowly, steadily, and never pried. I thought that if Frank were still alive, he would have seen Leon as a kindred spirit. A man who had lived through his own losses and still kept his kindness. After dinner, we sat on the sofa. Outside, wind hissed through the window frame, dragging the cold in. Leon looked at me, his voice low. "You know, Martha, I spent more than 20 years in the fire service. I've seen all kinds of people. Some run into flames to save others, and some light the match just to watch someone suffer. Evan seems like the second kind." I bowed my head, tears spilling. "I raised the very hand that wants to kill me." Leon shook his head. "You didn't make him. Greed and fear did. You simply loved the wrong way." We fell silent. In the quiet, the wind tapping the glass sounded like ghostly whispering. I said softly, "I don't even know whether I want him caught anymore. He's still my son." Leon answered, slowly, "Justice doesn't orbit around kinship, Martha. It orbits around the truth." Around 8 p.m., Richard called again, his voice rough. "We found Evan's car. It was abandoned near a bus station 5 miles away, but the security cameras didn't capture them leaving. They may have switched vehicles, or had help." I asked, "What about the search teams?" "They're spreading in all directions," he said. We'll send 2 more officers to post up at your complex tonight in case they come here. After I hung up, I tried to reassure myself that everything was in the police's hands. But deep down, I still had that strange feeling, a mother's vague sense that once predicted every bad turn with her child. Near midnight, Leon was still awake. He sat by the window, quietly watching the alley below where pale yellow light washed the sidewalk. I tried to sleep but managed only a few minutes. When I woke, the room was pitch black, and Leon hadn't slept. He spoke softly. "Something's off. The 2 officers assigned here haven't returned to position. They should have swept the area and checked in." I sat straight up, my heart kicking hard. "What do you mean? They disappeared?" Leon nodded, eyes fixed on the window frame. "It could be a communications glitch, but I don't like this feeling." I grabbed the phone to call Richard, no signal. I tried again, nothing. The screen just read "no service." Leon frowned. "This isn't random. Turn off all the lights and lock the inner latch." We moved in the dark, hearing only our heartbeats and quick breaths. Leon pulled a small knife from his pocket and lowered his voice. "Follow me." "Bathroom." Not a sound. I trembled after him. The apartment sank into an odd stillness. The only light was a faint bluish strip leaking under the door. Leon threw the bathroom bolt and tugged me down to the floor. The tiles cold crept into my palms. I heard blood pounding in my ears, fast, until another sound edged in the footsteps outside the front door. Slow, heavy, each step landing on my heart. Leon pressed a finger to his lips, silence. I bit down until I tasted blood. The steps drew closer, then stopped right at our door. A breathless pause. Then the rattle of a key turning in the lock. The door opened with a soft sigh, like fate itself. Someone stepped in. Shoes tapped the wood. Slow, careful. The air's scent changed, a familiar sting that pierced me. Naomi's perfume. Leon squeezed my hand, warning me not to react. I tried not to shake, but ice spread through me. Then a voice. "Mom, I know you're in there." My heart stopped. Evan, lower, hoarser, but unmistakable. "Mom, don't hide anymore. I don't want to hurt you. I just need to talk." Tears slid onto the cold floor. I wanted to believe this was the son I loved, but every word carried a slick, false sheen. Outside, footsteps moved around the apartment. I heard a doorknob twist. Something swept off a table. "Mom, I don't want this to go any further. You know I love you, right?" Leon's grip on my shoulder tightened. "Don't answer." My throat closed. Every word Evan spoke was a needle, both gentle and cruel. A small sound popped in the bathroom corner, maybe a drop from the faucet. Evan stopped instantly. The whole apartment fell silent. Then the footsteps shifted toward the bedroom, slow and sure. I whispered to Leon, lips trembling, "Do you think he has a key?" Leon only nodded, eyes on the door. "Quiet, we can't give ourselves away." Then a soft knock right outside the bathroom door. "Mom, don't make me do something I don't want to do. You know I won't leave while you're still here." His voice was honeyed, but I heard the blade beneath it. My tears wouldn't stop. I saw that little boy again, the one with the green kite running under the late sun. Now he stood a door's width away with death in his hands. Leon breathed, into my ear, barely more than air. "Stay calm. I have a knife. If he breaks the door, slide behind the tub. I'll handle it." I nodded, clutching my hem, my heart racing to a breaking point. Outside, metal scraped the wall, the ring of a blade, sharp and vile. Evan sighed. "I only want to end this peacefully, Mom. Don't make me choose another way." I bit my lip and swallowed my sob. If he heard me, it would all end here. In that moment, I realized the cruelest part wasn't the betrayal, it was holding my breath, while the child I brought into this world hovered at the line between man and monster. And in the thick dark of that bathroom, I understood. The nightmare I once gave birth to now stood on the other side of the door, one breath away. The bathroom was so small that one deep breath pressed my ribs against the cold tile. The only light was that fragile strip under the door, quivering like my own breath. Outside, Evan's voice came even and soft, chillingly soft. "Mom, I'm only trying to help you. People are using you. I can tell they're no good. They just want your money." His tone flowed like a sad song, but every word carried the cold control of someone who'd planned each step. I shut my eyes, willing my breath to steady. Each syllable sliced at memory, tearing the picture of the boy who once sat on my lap for story time. I swallowed and spoke loud enough through the door. "Help me? By killing me, Evan?" A long silence. The air seemed to harden. Rain pattered at the window. Then he spoke, lower, heavier. "I didn't want to, but you don't understand. You never share. I owe people. They threatened to kill both of us. Naomi only came up with a way for you to go gently. You wouldn't feel pain." I let out a small laugh, hollow with despair. "Gently? You call poisoning me gentle? It was you or us. I chose to live, Mom. You taught me to be strong, to do whatever it takes to survive. I don't know when." My tears started. My son's words shredded the blood bond thread by thread. Each sentence was a knife. No untouched place left in my heart. Leon whispered, air thin, "We need time." "I'm opening the window. Be ready." I nodded slightly and kept him talking. "Evan, do you remember the story I told you as a kid? The boy who cried wolf, he lied until no one came when the real wolf showed up. You're that boy now." Metal scraped behind me, Leon working the latch. Outside, Evan chuckled, a hollow sound. "No, you're the one being fooled. I've seen how they look at you like prey with money. You sold the house, moved the money, believed them. I'm the only one protecting you. And poisoning me is how you protect me?" My voice cracked. "Look at me, Evan. Did you ever think how it feels for the mother who bore you to know her only child wants her dead?" His voice dropped, cornered and wild. "You don't get it. If I don't do this, they'll kill Naomi. I won't let her die. I love her." Leon tugged my sleeve ready. I edged back to the cold wall, heart jackhammering. Evan's voice frayed, unraveling. "You think I'm a monster, but you left me alone my whole childhood. When Dad died, you just cried. I had to handle things, pay debts, endure it all. And now you blame me?" I shook not from fear, but from the certainty he'd crossed the line of reason. He was hunting for any story that could excuse a crime. I drew a breath, the words scraping out. "If you really believed I abandoned you, why didn't you say it? Why choose to kill me? You want everything, Evan, not only the money, but my soul." He roared and slammed the door. Wood cracked, hinges screamed. Leon caught my arm and whispered, "Go. Now." I crawled to the small window Leon had pried open. Cold air slapped my face. The frame was so narrow I had to angle my body to squeeze through. Wood split again, the second hit harder, the whole room shuddering. Leon lifted me, pushed. "Hurry, Martha." I slid out, my body scraping the frame. Wind gusted up, the damp, metallic smell of the fire escape turning my stomach. My feet had barely hit the cold iron when the bathroom door exploded behind us. "Mom!" Evan bellowed. "No one can save you." I glanced back, his eyes flashed under the jittering light, feral and desperate. Leon stepped out, planting himself between us, knife catching a dull gleam. "Move!" Evan snarled. "No," Leon said, calm but iron. "You won't hurt her anymore." I didn't look again. Leon motioned, and I went down the ladder. Metal shrieked under my shoes, the rain pounded. Below, darkness pooled, but I clung to each rung, heart beating wild. Above, a crash, steel on steel, a body falling, then silence. I turned, barely in time to see Leon step back, clutching his chest, and Evan charging. I cried out, "Leon, down here!" He glanced back and shouted, "Run, Martha! I'm right behind you!" I bit down, tears mixing with rain. If I turned back, I might not live. So I kept moving, hands stinging, legs shaking. Overhead, Evan's voice warped through the storm. "You can't hide! You're mine! Your money is mine!" I didn't answer. I climbed faster, my shoes hamming the rungs like a survival drum. On the second-floor landing, I jumped to the wet grass and skidded across the cold ground. Leon reached the window, gasping. He waved, "Go!" A ripping scream of metal split the night, then Evan's furious bellow like a curse. "You'll never get away from me!" I bolted into the alley, legs numb. Rain slapped my face, air like knives. Leon was right behind me. Each breath and heartbeat blended into the crash behind us. I didn't dare look back. If I hesitated even a second, I might never see daylight again. We cut across the empty street, streetlights flickering to dim. I heard his footsteps pounding after us, heavy, relentless, like my worst fear given flesh. The rain swallowed every sound but my heart's hammer. Each step was a prayer. "Dear God, don't let my son kill me." And in that thick darkness, a bitter truth landed. Sometimes the person who terrifies you most isn't a stranger, it's the child you once trusted without limit. I gripped Leon's hand, and we tore through the alley toward the distant wash of police lights. Rain kept falling, heavy, mixing with my tears, tears not only of fear, but for a mother's love shattered beyond repair. Rain drummed the tin roof like battle beats. We had just cleared the alley when a crash behind made me turn. Under the twitching streetlight, Evan hurled himself from the second floor, slammed into the soaked pavement, stumbled, then rose, knife blazing a hard line through the night. "No one can save you!" He howled, his voice warping in the rain. Leon pivoted, putting himself between us. He pulled his small knife and raised it. "Run, Martha! Now!" he shouted, voice breaking. I couldn't think, only hear my heart battering my ribs. I stumbled back, then ran, legs shaking but moving. Rain whipped my face, water slicing my skin like tiny blades, but I didn't stop. Behind us, metal clanged, knives colliding, sharp and sickening. Leon growled. Evan screamed. I wanted to turn, but my legs kept going on a primal command. Live. I burst onto the main road, headlights sweeping over me. I threw up my arms and yelled into the rain, "Help me, please! Someone's trying to kill me!" A yellow cab skidded and stopped, door flung open. The driver, a middle-aged man, eyes wide, stared at me. "Ma'am, what happened?" "Please, the nearest police station." I gasped, diving into the back seat, soaked to the bone. The car shot forward, water exploding under the tires. I looked back through the rear glass. Evan was sprinting after us, shirt smeared with blood, face bone white, hair plastered by rain. His eyes were wild. "Please, faster." I cried. The driver pushed the pedal, the needle jumping past 80. I crushed my bag to my chest, my heart threatening to split. The red taillights fell away, blurring into the storm. When we turned onto the street leading to the precinct, I finally exhaled. The driver stopped and opened my door, his voice shaking. "Do you need me to come in?" "No, thank you. You saved me." I stumbled out, clutching my bag strap, hurrying across the rain-slick lobby. A young officer rushed to steady me. "Ma'am, are you all right? What happened?" "My name is Martha Ellison. I'm in Detective Richard Hayes's witness protection. My son, he just attacked," I said, breath scraping. At Richard's name, the officer's face changed. He spoke into his radio, urgent. "Get Hayes now. Emergency tied to suspect Evan Ellison. Minutes later, Richard appeared, coat still dripping. He hurried over, a steady hand on my shoulder. "Martha, easy. You're safe now. Where's Leon?" "He stayed. Evan had a knife." I choked, tears lost in the rain. Richard snapped orders. "Emergency response, move on the safe apartment now. Possible victim with injuries, and the suspect still in the area." The station erupted. Radios crackled non-stop. Sirens screamed outside. I sat on a chair, hands locked together. My body was freezing, but my head burned. Snatches of chatter braided together. Unit 3. Head to Maple Avenue. Armed suspect. Careful, he's dangerous. All I could do was pray. About 40 minutes later, Richard came back, soaked through. His eyes were heavy, but gentle when they met mine. "Leon is alive," he said slowly. "Bad wounds to the shoulder and flank, but he's at the hospital." He fought hard. I covered my mouth, tears bursting. "And Evan?" Richard was quiet for a few seconds, then answered, "He was shot while resisting. The bullet hit his left shoulder. He's currently being treated under police supervision." I didn't know whether to feel relieved or shattered. Emptiness seeped into every breath. I dropped my head into my hands, sobbing without sound. My son, the child who once held my hand on sunlit streets, now lay in the emergency room because he had tried to kill his own mother. Richard sat down beside me. His voice was low, firm, but full of kindness. "You can't blame yourself. He went too far. But thanks to you, this case will end. Naomi was arrested at the Greyhound station and is on her way back. She confessed to everything." "She?" I asked softly, too spent to feel hatred. "She said she was the one who came up with the poisoning plan. They tested small doses for months. You survived only because your body reacted more slowly than they expected." I clenched my hands until my nails bit into my skin. Every word Richard spoke was 1,000 needles. I didn't know whether I was crying from pain or from the luck of surviving. After a while, he stood up. "You should rest. Tomorrow morning I'll take you to the hospital. Leon wants to see you." I nodded but didn't move. After Richard left the room, I stayed there, watching the rain pour white outside the window. That night felt endless. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Evan's eyes in the rain, empty, afraid, and full of hatred. The next morning, I went to the hospital. Leon was lying in bed, bandages wrapped around his shoulder and chest, but he was alert. When he saw me, he managed a faint smile. "Are you all right, Martha?" I sat in the chair by his bed and took his hand. "If it weren't for you, I might be dead." He shook his head. "No, you're the strong one. I just did the right thing." Tears filled my eyes again, but this time not only from fear, also from the knowledge that there is still goodness in this world. Richard walked in carrying a folder. "Official update. Evan is being held in isolation. Naomi has given a full statement. They will both be prosecuted for attempted murder and deliberate poisoning." I looked down, my voice catching. "I've lost my son, but at least justice has found its way back." Richard was silent, then placed a hand on my shoulder. "No one deserves this, Martha, but you survived, and that is the strongest proof of the truth." I looked out the window. Morning light filtered through the leaves, soft and clear. The sky after the rain seemed tired, but cleaner. I thought of Frank if he were alive. This would break his heart. But I also knew he would be proud that I'd found the courage to stand up, even when my opponent was my own blood. When I left the hospital, I paused in the corridor, watching drops of sunlight fall across the tile floor. With each step, a surge of loss rose up, and with it, a strange sense of release. Evan, the child I once loved more than myself, was now a criminal. but deep inside, I still whispered a prayer for him. Not that he be spared punishment, but that he understand. A mother can forgive, but she never forgets. I stepped outside the hospital and drew a deep breath of the clean air after rain. My life had changed forever, but I was still alive, and that was the one thing the dark could not steal. I lifted my face to the blue sky and said softly, "Frank, do you see? I did it. I escaped the nightmare I gave birth to. Amid the passing crowd, I walked on a mother carrying a wound that would never fully heal, but also a life force no one could extinguish. I lost my child, but I found myself again. 3 days after the incident, I was still in the hospital under police supervision. My body had clearly weakened. Sudden dizzy spells and tingling in my fingertips worried me. Richard said the doctors wanted to run more tests because traces of arsenic, the same toxin found in the bathroom wall, were in my blood. The chief physician explained, fortunately, the dosage was low, accumulated over time, but not enough to cause permanent damage. If you'd arrived a few weeks later, we might only be reading your name in a forensic report. I gave a faint smile, thanked him, and lay quietly. His words kept echoing. If you'd arrived a few weeks later. A thin line between life and death, held together by an old plumber and a strange tug of instinct on a quiet afternoon. I was moved to a calmer room with a window facing the garden. Sunlight streamed through the white curtain, catching tiny dust motes suspended in the air. Outside, people came and went, couples, children holding their parents' hands. Part of me felt envy, another part only emptiness. That afternoon, Richard came by. He said Leon was out of danger and able to talk. I immediately asked to see him. When I walked into Leon's room, he was propped against the pillows, his shoulder wrapped in white, his eyes as sharp and gentle as ever. "You look better," he said softly. "I heard you nearly died," I answered, trying to keep dough. My voice steady though my eyes burned. Leon smiled faintly, his hand trembling as he squeezed mine. "I used to think I had no reason to live, but that night, when I heard Evan's footsteps, I knew what I had to do." I looked at him in surprise. He hesitated a moment, then continued, voice rough with feeling. "My mother died when I was 23. She was poisoned by a cousin to steal our grandparents' house. I was young then, didn't believe it, didn't stop it in time. From that day, I owed my mother a debt for life. When I saw you, I saw her another woman betrayed by her own kin. I fell silent. The room sank into the past. The monitor beeped steadily, punctuating the heavy quiet. "So," Leon went on, "that night I didn't think much. I just did the right thing, the thing I didn't do in time for my mother." I gripped his hand, my heart swelling with a wordless gratitude. This man, a stranger, risked his life to protect me, simply to redeem a sleeping grief half a lifetime old. I answered softly, "You did more than that, Leon. You saved a soul." He smiled and murmured, "And you, Martha, you saved me from regret." We sat in silence for a long time. The last light of day washed the curtain in a soft gold. I realized that between two aging, wounded people, a quiet kind of kinship could exist, one no blood tie could match. That evening, Richard came back to my room, his face more serious than usual. "Evan's awake," he said. "He asked to see you." My heart tightened. I said nothing for several seconds. I couldn't name what I felt, fear, anger, or simple exhaustion. I asked, "What if I refuse?" "That's fine," Richard said. "You have that right, but sometimes meeting the truth head-on is how you end it." I sat still, eyes on the dark window. The streetlight cast pale streaks like a memory of rain. I thought of the night Evan shouted in the dark, of his eyes when he was caught, the thin line between my son and a stranger. At last I said, "I'll see him, just once." The next morning, I was escorted to the secure patient ward. 2 officers accompanied me. The air in the corridor was so cold our breaths turned to fog. When the door opened, Evan lay there, arm wrapped in bandages, face gaunt, but his eyes were still bright, sharp as ever. He turned when he saw me. Something flickered: surprise, shame, or simply emptiness. I stood a few steps from the bed. No one spoke for several seconds. Only the monitor ticked steadily. "You really came," he rasped, lips cracked. "I thought you'd hide forever." "I have nothing left to hide from," I said quietly. "Everything is clear." Evan stared at me for a long moment, then let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "You know, I don't regret what I did. I only regret failing." The words squeezed my heart in a cruel fist. I looked at him and no longer saw the son I once knew. In those eyes, there was no love, no conscience, only the ash of greed and resentment. I said softly, my voice shaking but clear, "My son died the day you decided to kill your mother." He closed his eyes, turned his head, and smiled a cold, thin smile. "Then you should plan a funeral. I won't die quietly." I didn't answer. I just stood there, looking at the stranger on the bed, the one who used to call me Mom, who once clutched my hand in the dark, who once promised as a boy to protect me. All of it was a distant memory now. I turned and walked out. The metal door shut behind me with a dry clang. Each step felt like treading on shattered pieces of memory. In the hallway, morning sun ran through the glass and across my face. For the first time in months, that light didn't feel cold. I stood for a moment with my eyes closed, letting the warmth spread lightly over my skin. A single tear fell no longer from pain, but as a farewell. Leon waited in the corridor, leaning on a cane, smiling when he saw me. "I'm guessing you said what you needed to say?" "I didn't say much," I answered. "Because some things don't need words anymore." We walked slowly down the long hallway, where the sun painted gold stripes across the floor. I heard the breeze at the window, the small cries of birds, ordinary sounds that felt sacred today. I had lost my son, but not myself. I had survived a poison not only in my body, but in the blind love of a mother. At the end of the hall, I stopped to look out at the hospital garden. Lavender bloomed pale purple. A light wind stirred, and its scent drifted in the air. I spoke to Leon, and to myself. At last, the light has come. And in that moment, I knew my life, though full of wounds, still had room for another beginning. The beginning of peace. 6 months had passed since that rainy night, but the storm's echo still lingered in me as if it had never left. 6 months for my body to heal, for the law to finish its files, for justice to find its voice among cold sheets of paper. That morning I sat in the courtroom, hands clenched on my lap, palms damp. Evan sat in the defendant's row, wrinkles in his orange prison uniform, cuff marks still on his wrists. Naomi sat beside him, head bowed, but I knew she wasn't crying. Her shoulders were stiff, her mouth set as if swallowing rage. The judge read the sentence, voice ringing. The court sentences the defendant, Evan Ellison, to 25 years in prison for premeditated attempted murder, with aggravating circumstances for conspiring to seize assets. The defendant, Naomi Ellison, receives 18 years in prison for aiding and participating in the poisoning. The room fell silent. I heard a pen tap the desk, heard cuffs clink as officers led them away. Neither of them looked back at me. No glance, no tear, no sign of remorse. I thought, they chose that road so long that they no longer recognized the darkness they walked in. When the courtroom door closed, I felt empty inside. Not joy, not pain, just a dry quiet. Leon sat next to me and laid a hand on my shoulder. "Justice was done, Martha. Now you need to think about yourself." I nodded and whispered, "I'll try." In the months that followed, life slowly returned to its track, though it wasn't the same. Leon recovered better than expected. He still went for checkups, then stopped by my place with hot coffee and small stories from the street. He and I became friends, a quiet friendship that didn't need many words. Some days he'd fix a window hinge or help me plant more lavender on the balcony. I asked, "Why do you keep helping me?" Leon smiled, eyes gentle. "Because I still owe you a proper cup of coffee, not a midnight escape." I laughed, and for the first time in months, my laughter didn't tremble. When my health steadied, I decided to sell the old apartment in the city, the place once called safe, but soaked in bleeding memories. I moved to a small, seaside town in Maine, nearly a 3-hour drive away. There, the sea wind moved through the pines, salt mixed with the smell of morning coffee, and the sun rose in the same place every day, gentle, without judgment. I bought a small wooden house painted white, its windows facing the ocean. In the mornings I woke early, brewed a cup of black tea, and opened the window to listen to the waves. It felt like learning to breathe again. Leon stopped by sometimes with apple pie or the morning paper. We sat on the porch and talked about ordinary things: the weather, new neighbors, the birds on the rail. He always made coffee for us both and said the same line each time: "Morning coffee is the reason to keep going, Martha." I smiled. Maybe that's true. With the remaining money from the home sale and insurance, I started a small fund called the Elder Hope Foundation. The goal was to help older adults who were abused or had assets seized by their children, just as I had been. Richard was the first to support it. He connected me with legal aid groups and volunteers. We began by helping 3 initial cases: mothers and fathers hurt by their own families. I listened as they told me about children who used care to control finances and grandchildren who took advantage of trust to swindle. Each story was another shard of a broken world, but it also showed me I wasn't alone. I remember the first small ribbon cutting. I said to the room, "I didn't create this fund for revenge. I created it to prove that we can lose our children and still never lose our dignity." The applause rose soft but warm. For the first time in years, my heart filled not with fear or regret, but with purpose. Every evening I sat on a wooden chair outside, watching the sun sink into the sea. The sunset spread over the water like a sheet of glowing silk. I often closed my eyes, let the sea wind thread through my hair, listened to the waves beat like a slow heartbeat of a peaceful world. I thought of what had happened, of Evan, of Naomi, of those days when I thought I would die in that house. I no longer wanted to forget, and I didn't need perfect forgiveness. I simply learned to accept. Sometimes a cruel truth is the door that leads us to freedom. I once believed family was everything. Now I understand family isn't only blood, but those who stand beside you when the world turns its back. For me, that's Leon, and Richard, and the strangers who helped me keep living. One clear morning after a night of rain, I was watering plants when I heard a knock. Leon stood there with 2 hot coffees, the aroma curling across the porch. "Morning coffee, Mrs. Martha. I was thinking today we should walk the beach." I laughed. "If you don't knock every morning, I'll think the sun forgot to rise." He handed me a cup, eyes warm. "The sun can be late, but coffee can't get cold." We walked along the damp sand, the wind tugging at my sweater. In the distance, gulls wheeled, their rough calls skimming the silvered waves. I lifted my face to the deep blue and felt a lightness like the first breath after a long storm. "Leon," I said, "did you ever think life would give us a second chance at this age?" He smiled and slowed his step beside me. "A second chance isn't something life gives, it's something we dare to reach for." I looked out at the sea, waves rising and falling, endless as time. I knew my past hadn't vanished. It remained, like footprints pressed into sand. But now, I was strong enough to walk on. As the sun climbed, light shattered across the water like 1,000 tiny mirrors. I took a deep breath and smiled. Life goes on, and so do I. In that moment, I realized freedom doesn't come from leaving someone behind, but from finding the courage to live for yourself. When I began to tell my story, I didn't think anyone would want to listen. I just thought that writing or speaking it out might lighten me, as if laying down a load. What I didn't expect was how many hearts it would touch. I received an invitation from a nonprofit that supports abused older adults. They found me through the Elder Hope Foundation. They wanted me to share my experience at a conference in Portland, hundreds in attendance, from social workers to older adults seeking help. I remember the feeling of standing on that stage, the lights on my face, heat rising from the wooden floor, my heart racing, but my voice steady in a strange way. I told everything: the bathroom tiles, Naomi's vitamins, the words, "Mom, I know you're in there." I didn't dodge the pain or try to justify anyone. I simply spoke in the voice of someone who had walked to the edge and survived. When the talk ended, many people came up to hug me. An elderly woman with silver hair, hands trembling, said she had been tricked by her daughter into signing papers to transfer her house. A thin old man grew teary because his son had taken all his pension and threw him out of the house. A middle-aged woman whispered through tears, "I used to think I was crazy because no one believed me when I said my own child was threatening me. But hearing you, I know I'm not alone anymore." That evening, when I got home, the foundation's inbox was full of letters and emails. Dozens. Then hundreds of people shared their stories, people betrayed, stripped of dignity, yet still longing to see justice and their own worth recognized. I read every letter, every shaky line, and I understood that my story was no longer just mine. I became a voice not because I'm stronger than anyone else, but because I survived to speak for those who can't yet. Leon often sat beside me whenever we received a new letter. He read slowly, eyes full of thought. Once he said, "Maybe, Martha, that's why God kept us here. Not to live just for ourselves, but to help others avoid the same fate." From then on, we started hosting small talks on recognizing signs of subtle abuse. There, Leon shared, from the perspective of someone who had witnessed it, and I spoke from the perspective of someone who lived it. We talked about behaviors that seem harmless, controlling finances, emotional manipulation, isolating someone from friends, the phrases, "it's for your own good," that are really handcuffs made of words. At every session, I would see someone's eyes in the audience fill with tears, a look of recognizing themselves. One evening after we finished a talk at a community center, Leon said while we were clearing the table, "Frank would be proud of you." I stopped, my heart dipping at my late husband's name. It had been a long time since anyone said it. I looked out the window, where the sunset was staining the sea red, and said softly, "I think so too." He always believed I was stronger than I thought. Maybe he would smile to see me still standing. Leon smiled gently. "Not just standing, you're helping others stand up too." As time passed, the scars in my heart slowly healed. I didn't forget, but the pain became part of my strength. Someone once asked me if I felt like a winner. I thought about it for a long time, then answered, "I didn't beat anyone. I just didn't let them take my dignity." I learned that victory doesn't always look like a courtroom or a sentence. Sometimes it's simply living without fear, daring to look in the mirror each morning and see a woman not ruined by her past. Every night before bed, I wrote a few lines in my journal. On the last page of that year, I wrote, "My son lost everything, but I won myself back." I walked through the darkness and learned that light isn't ahead of us. It lives in those who keep going. The following spring, Leon and I returned to the seaside town we chose to call home. Every afternoon, we sat on the rocks and watched the sun sink into the water. The salty wind blew through, carrying the smell of seaweed and the warm taste of life. I closed my eyes and felt the steady waves, like the peaceful heartbeat of life itself. I realized every pain I had endured led me to this moment where I could stand tall and fill my lungs without trembling. I had closed the past and opened a different path, the path of a survivor, not a victim. Leon looked at me, his voice warm as the sea breeze. You know, every time I see you, I believe even more that people can be reborn, even if they've been completely burned down. I laughed, the sunset reflecting in my eyes. I'm not reborn, Leon. I just chose to live this time, on my own terms. We sat quietly, watching the sun slip below the horizon. The last light ran across the water, a golden path like a road of faith. In that moment, I whispered not to anyone, just to the wind and the sea, I am free. For the first time in years, I said it without fear, without bitterness. Only peace. I knew that was the forted, only legacy I wanted to leave behind. The belief that even after betrayal, even after falling, people can stand up with their dignity intact. A year after that fateful trial, I officially founded the Silver Haven Foundation, a small but humane refuge for older adults betrayed by their children, relatives, or guardians. The name Silver Haven, a haven for silver heads, was Leon's idea. He said, older people don't need pity. They need a place to be heard and respected. I agreed immediately. The foundation started modestly, just a few members and a small office near the shore, but then my story spread everywhere. Newspapers wrote about a mother who survived her own child's plot. Senior groups sent letters of thanks. Those who had been hurt came to tell me their stories. I remember the first morning we opened. An almost 80-year-old woman came in, her hands trembling as she held an envelope. She spoke softly, I don't have much, but I want to donate, because I know what it feels like to be deceived by your own child. I hugged her and couldn't speak. Tears rolled down my cheeks, not from pity, but because we recognized each other in the scars of the same pain. My story kept traveling farther than I ever imagined. A TV network invited me to speak on a program about extraordinary survivors. They filmed at my small seaside house, where the light came through the window and fell across my face, not the face of fear anymore, but of someone who found peace after the storm. When they asked if I still hated Evan, I gently shook my head. No. I don't hate anyone anymore. I'm simply grateful to still live, to still breathe, and to help others avoid that road. Leon sat on the porch that day, quietly watching me through the glass. His eyes were warm as late afternoon sun. We had gone far enough together that we didn't need words. Every week, we kept our habit of morning coffee on the wooden porch, watching the sun rise from the sea. He brewed it strong, and I liked a bit of milk. He always joked, "You're the only person I know who can turn a black coffee into a caramel milk." I laughed, and we fell quiet, watching gulls cross the sky and listening to the waves, a slow heartbeat of a life at rest. I understood that sometimes a cruel betrayal is the beginning of a rebirth. Without that dark night, I wouldn't have found my strength, nor would I have met wonderful people like Leon, Richard, or those I help today. One late summer evening, I stood in front of the camera, recording a new campaign for the foundation. The sea behind me was deep blue, the waves steady, and the salty wind lifted my gray hair. I looked straight into the lens, my voice slow but firm. If you're watching this, please don't ever think it's too late to protect yourself. Trust your instincts, and don't let love, even blood ties, blind you to the truth. I paused a few seconds, then smiled softly. Because justice doesn't always come from the courts. It begins the moment you say no to what's wrong. After the shoot, Leon handed me a coffee and asked, "You know, I think Frank is looking down and smiling." I smiled, eyes drifting to the horizon where the sun was setting. "I think so too. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, I've done something that makes him proud." Now, whenever dusk falls, I go to the beach and sit on the old wooden chair. The orange light spreads over the water and reflects in my eyes, eyes that have seen hell and still choose the light. I listen to the waves and feel the sea's breath blend with my heartbeat. I know my journey isn't over. But I have truly closed the past and opened a new life, a life of faith, freedom, and gratitude. The sky turns pale, purple, and the gulls return to their nests. I murmur, almost a whisper to the wind, "Thank you for giving me a second chance to live and to love the right way." Leon steps out, sets a hand on my shoulder, his voice low and gentle as the surf. "Tomorrow I'll brew coffee earlier, the sun's going to be strong." I smile. "All right, just don't let it get cold." He laughs, and I look toward the horizon where the day's last light dissolves into the sea. I know that life, no matter how many times it breaks, always opens a narrow path for those who dare to keep walking. And I, a mother once betrayed, have become a woman set free by her own belief. If you're still listening, thank you truly for taking the time to hear my journey. Tell me where you're watching from, maybe a small town, a home on a corner street, or beside a morning cup of tea. If you've witnessed or experienced injustice in your family, share your story in the comments so we know no one is alone. And if you believe, as I have, that justice and kindness still exist, please like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so we can keep sharing stories of courage, faith, and renewal. I turn to Leon, lift my cup for a gentle clink, then look out to the sea where the sunset blazes like a promise. Life goes on, and I once more smile at freedom.